put you into my my slideshow. So hang on just a moment and I will get you there. There are my slides. And this is an example of a Pareto chart. A Pareto chart is based on the work of Vilfredo Pareto, which I know does not sound like a real name, but it really is. So in this example, we have reasons that people gave for late arrival to work. And they are sorted, I want you to notice, in most frequently occurring to least frequently occurring order. In other words, from highest to lowest. So the number one highest reason that people said they were late to work was because of traffic. And if you look at the scale on the left-hand side, that looks like it's around, what would that be, say 54, 55, something like that. Instances of that within the time period they looked at. Next would be childcare, which looks like it's around 40. Then public transportation, which looks like it's falling around 30. Weather, which looks like it might be around 20. Overslept, which looks like it might be around 15%. And emergency, which looks like it might be around 3%. I don't have the exact numbers for this particular one. But here's the interesting thing. There is also another scale. The other scale is on the right-hand side. And I want you to notice that that scale always goes from 0% to 100%. That is known as the cumulative frequency. What that means is, if you look at the first dot, the very first dot, and I'm going to use my pointer options to highlight it. The first dot for that is marked right here. And when you trace that across, that's just between 30 and 40. So about 33 or 34% is the traffic. When you add traffic and childcare, the first two together, combined, those are about 60%. When you combine the first three, traffic, childcare, public transportation, you come up with about 77%. When you combine the first four, include weather in that, you get to about 90%. When you include overslept, you get up to about 96 or 97%. And by the time you include all of them, it's a 100% reason. So what this is letting you see, of course, is the idea. Oops, excuse me. I'm going to go back and give you back my window there. Oops, hang on. Now let me see if I can give you my window again. I apologize. There we go. I'm sharing again. But what you're going to notice there is that we have all of the reasons, and it gives you a way to prioritize. So if you were to be able to take care of traffic issues, that would get rid of more than 30% of your late arrival problems. So this chart allows you to see where to direct your energies. Basically, this is work based on the work of Vilfredo Pareto. Pareto was an economist, and so his work was really more about the economy. But in quality, Joseph Juran took the Pareto principle, which is described as the 80-20 rule, and applied it to quality. So essentially, Juran and Pareto said that a few problems, 20% of problems, will present the most opportunity for improvement, about 80%. And so what the Pareto diagram does is helps you get a clear picture of where you can make the best contribution. So what they're used to do in Six Sigma is they allow you to analyze a problem from a new perspective. They allow you to focus on problems in priority order. They allow you to compare data changes at different times. So for example, you may look at one Pareto before you do the project and then do a second Pareto after the project to see how your priorities have changed. And they also provide the basics for a construction of a cumulative line. The main goal that I use these for in Six Sigma is to help you pick or narrow down a project. So we're going to learn how to do one by hand. And what you see here is essentially just a little recording checklist. And let's say that we have been having problems with on-time delivery. And for a certain period of time, let's say 6 months, this pretends it's 6 months. We have found that 4 times we were waiting for production to finish something, twice we were waiting for shipping, looks like 7 times we were waiting for vehicle maintenance, looks like 14 times we were looking for missing paperwork, 12 times it was misshipped, and then there were 4 others that just seemed to be one-time kind of things, so we grouped them together as other. So what we are going to now do is create a chart in order of high frequency to low. And so what this particular chart is doing is it's showing you the frequency of all the major categories with the exception of other. We put other at the end, even though it is larger than 2, which shipping was, because it just represents a number of one-time things, sort of special cause variation things. Now, I am going to show you how to get the rest of this chart, but to do that, I'm going to start by showing you how to do it by hand. So I am going to stop sharing, and I'm going to pick up my camera so that I can see what's going on with the camera. Here is my sheet of paper, and I've done a little bit of prep. I have written out the frequency at the top of each of the categories, and I have written them in reverse order, so the highest is at the top. And then I have written a scale. So I have decided the most high frequency was 14. So I created a scale on the left side of my graph paper that goes from 0 to 15. And then I have written each of the categories that we identified across the bottom of my page. That's how I'm actually going to do the graph. But I'm first going to show you how to do the actual calculations. So the first thing we're going to do is we are going to look at all of those frequencies, and we are going to add them together to come up with a total. So that is 14 plus 12 plus 7 plus 4 plus 2 plus 4. And that's going to give me a total of 43. Okay. So now I am going to calculate the percentage of total that each one of these categories made up. To calculate percentage of total, I am going to take the individual frequency and divide it by the total. So up here above percentage, I'm going to put frequency divided by total to remind you of how I'm getting that math. Frequency divided by total. So to do the first one, it is going to be the number 14, oops, just a moment, 14 divided by 43, and that's going to come out to 32.5. So I'm going to round that up to 33%. Misshipped is going to be 12 divided by 43, which is going to come out to 27.9. So I'm going to round that up to 28%. Next, it's going to be 7 divided by 43, which is going to come out to about 16%. Next is going to be 4 divided by 43, which is going to come out to just barely above 9%. So I'm going to round that down. Next is going to be 2 divided by 43, which is going to come out to right about 5%. And then just for myself, to make sure that my numbers are adding up to 100%, I'm going to add my percentages. 33 plus 28 plus 16 plus 9 plus 5 coming out to 91%. This last one should be 9%, which is what it's going to come out to. 4 divided by 43 we've already done. So there we see our percentages: 33, 28, 16, 9, 5, and 9. Those are the individual percentages of the total. Now, the next thing that we have to calculate is something called the cumulative percentage. The cumulative percentage is simply adding all the percentages together as you go. So the first one is only the first category, so it would be the same as the percentage. If the percentage is 33, the cumulative percentage for the first one is also 33. The next one, we're going to take the 33 and add the 28% for the next category to make it come up to 61%. Then we're going to take the 61% and add it to the next percentage, which is 16, to bring it up to 77%. Then we're going to take the 77% and add the 9% to bring it to 86%. Then we're going to take the 86% and add the 5%, which is going to bring it to 91%. And finally, the 91% plus 9% is going to bring us to 100%. Now, the thing to remember is that we are only going to graph the frequency column and the cumulative percentage column. We do not graph the percentage column. We just need it to get the cumulative percentage. So the first thing we do is we do a regular column chart designating each of our categories and their count. So the first count is paperwork, and paperwork was 14. So I'm going to go up to 14 and do, say, a double row of squares. There is my first one for paperwork. Next is going to be misshipped. Misshipped happened 12 times. So I am going to draw those together. So there's misshipped that goes up to 12. Next is maintenance, which only goes to 7. So I'm going to draw maintenance. I drew that very poorly. I apologize. I didn't label it very clearly. Production is only going to go to 4%. So 4 of a frequency. So there's production. Then shipping only goes to 2. And then other is going to go back up to 4 because we combined a bunch of things in it. So there is the first scale. The first scale is on the left, and it is the count or the frequency of the number of times that that category happened. Now we're going to create another scale on the right-hand side. The right-hand side is going to be a scale of 0, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70. Oops, I'm making it too hard to do, so I'm going to go back 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100. And then I could go higher if I wanted to, but that's how I'm going to do it, through 100. So not very neat, but unfortunately my handwriting's bad. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to, as a dot, I'm going to plot each of these cumulative percentages. So on paperwork, it's about 33%. So if I go in the particular block, it's about there for 30%. 33%. Then the next one is going to be 61%. So I'm going to go in the next block up to about 61%. And I'm going to draw a line between those two. Then the next one is going to be 77%. So I'm going to go almost to 80 for it and draw a line up to there. And then the next one is going to be 86%. So that's going to be almost to 90. So it's going to go to there, draw my line connecting it. And then the next one is going to be 91. So it's going to be just over that line, just a little bit up. And then finally, it's going to go to 100% for other. So now I have a line that graphs my cumulative percentage. So what this is showing me is that if I just took care of paperwork issues, I could get rid of 33% of my problem. And if I took care of paperwork and missed shipping, that would get rid of, oh goodness, more than 60% of my problem. So you don't have to be super, super talented with math or super, super talented with drawing to do a Pareto chart by hand. However, I am going to show you how to do a Pareto chart in Excel. Okay, so we are now going to move back over so that sadly you will see me again. Hello, here I am. And I am going to share my screen with you. There I am. I'm going to share my screen with you. So here is my screen, and I have it already set up with the first part. So the hardest part of doing this in Excel is just doing the math. So the first thing that we have to do after we get our sorted frequencies there is total our frequency. So I am in the cell for total. I am going to go up to the total total button. It's basically called the auto sum button in Excel. And I'm going to choose sum, which is going to add up. And then I'm going to hit enter. All of my frequencies giving me the 43. Now, to calculate my percentages, it's pretty straightforward. I am going to say equal the frequency for paperwork, which is in B2 right now, divided, which is a slash, by the 43. Now, if I want to do this manually, that will work, but I'm lazy and I would like to copy. So what I'm going to do with that 43 is I'm going to press F4 on my keyboard, which is going to put a $ in front of the B and a $ in front of the 8. What that does is essentially freeze that cell so that when I copy it, it stays pointing to the same cell. So when I hit enter, it is going to give me in decimal the percentage. So now, because I have that done, I am going to use a trick to copy this. If you'll notice this, when I click in the cell that has the formula, there is a little green square in the bottom right-hand corner. When I hover over that green square, my mouse pointer turns into a black plus sign. I'm going to double click to copy that down. And now you see all of those are in decimals. They don't look like our pretty percentages. To make it a percentage, I'm simply going to hit the percent button. And there we are. It did all the rounding for us. Next, I'm going to add up the cumulative percentage. To do the cumulative percentage, it's pretty straightforward. The first one is simply equal, and then the cell that has the percentage. And then I'm going to hit enter. But for the next one, it's going to be equal the cell above, the cumulative percentage for the one above, plus the percentage for the one that you're on. And so now when I hit enter, that takes care of the second one. And then I'm going to be able to copy this down so that it finishes the rest for me. So there are my cumulative percentages. So now I need to graph this in such a way that I get only the frequency and only the cumulative percentage. So here's how I do that. I am going to select category frequency down to the totals, and then I'm going to let go of my mouse and I'm going to hold down Control while I select the words cumulative percentage down to 100%. And in fact, I am going to actually, I just made a mistake. So let me reselect and redo that because I included the total. I should not have included the total. So I apologize for the error. I want to go down to B7. So from A1 to B7 there, excluding the total, let go of my mouse, hold down Control, and get the cumulative percentage through 100%. It's important that the columns be the same number of rows. So now I'm going to choose Insert, 2D column, and there is my initial chart, which is not looking like a Pareto yet, but do not panic. The next thing I need to do is I need to change my chart type. So I'm going to go up to Change Chart Type, and I am going to use Combo, and I'm going to make frequency, which is the number of times, a clustered column, and I'm going to make the cumulative percentage a line. I'm also going to have frequency on the primary axis, which it already is, but I'm also going to say that cumulative percentage is going to be on a secondary axis. So now when I click OK, that's looking more like a Pareto. Now, there are a couple of things I can do. It really doesn't matter that the columns are not touching each other, but typically when we do this kind of chart, the columns do touch. So I'm going to do a little thing just to make it look better. I'm going to right-click on one of the columns, which is actually selecting all of them, and I'm going to choose Format Data Series, and I'm going to tell it to have 0 gap width. So I'm going to drag gap width all the way to 0. And then I'm going to close that. And that's going to look a great deal more like a Pareto chart. If we don't like the way that it looks, one of the things that I can do is select one of the columns and go to Format Data Series. And I can actually go to Fill and Line and choose Border and put a solid line border around it with a color of black. And by doing that, I actually make it easier to see the individual columns. If I would like to see the actual numbers, I can also do right-click and do Add Data Labels, and that will put the numbers on there for me. And that looks very much like a regular Pareto chart. I would only need to add the title. We will also learn how to do this in a program called Minitab, but I do want you to see that it is pretty doable in Excel. So I am going back to Google Hangouts. I am going to stop the broadcast, and we'll see you next time.